Hi, welcome to Exegetical Tasks video number 6. In this video, we're going to be going over the exegetical task number 6 that's in your exegetical task packet. Go ahead and turn to the appropriate page where you'll see Task 6, Comparing Translations. Now in this step, you're going to need those same 5 photocopies of English translations of your paragraph that you used in an earlier step. You'll be using these more than once throughout the course. You're going to build something here in this step that gives you something to launch from as you begin to do some of your other research. Maybe it will raise some questions for your mind that you can later go hunting down through commentaries to solve. All right, I'm going to be going to PowerPoint mode at this time. Be sure you follow along in your exegetical task packet as we do so. All right. A number of steps to this process are in step 6. It has a number of phases, so we'll get started here. And the example, what I've done there is provided some photos, some blow-ups of another example that I worked through, and so they'll be kind of zoomed in a little bit, and maybe that's helpful. Okay, what will we do in this step? The thing to do here is to determine the issues around word meaning, grammar, and textual critical matters. This also helps us get a preliminary handle on the grammatical, lexical, and textual issues we need to sort out and dig through the commentaries in the rest of our exegesis process. For English-based persons, and I doubt any of you in this course are going to be English-based. English-based is for those who are taking an exegesis class without knowing Greek. If you know Greek, you're going to be following the Greek-based approach, which I think is a little better. Well, more than a little. There's just some things you won't be able to assess if you are not handling the Greek steps. All right, so I have this bullet point in here in case there's somebody who takes the course without a background of Greek. Greek-based persons will use other methods in addition to this. Basically, the main places that translations are very different are the places where the Greek word meaning or grammar are difficult. Something's difficult, and so the translations are going every which way. Or there are places where there are different manuscripts that support different readings, and the textual critical problems abound, and that's the other reason translations go different ways. All right, what are we going to do? First, you need to make a provisional translation of your whole passage. So you've got a paragraph of Greek text. You should go ahead and make what we call a rough translation. You're going to be tweaking this as you do your research. It will not be finalized until you're about to finish the process of writing your paper. This will be a very literal, a wooden, a formal equivalency type translation. Be sure that you look at 3.1 in fee prior to doing this step. I want you to use just a generic of in front of any genitive expression in English. When you translate a genitive into English, say of an item, of a thing, of a person, and you can make tweaks on that later on. But for right now, just keep of. I realize that's not always the best translation, but this will help you spot as you're working through issues, oh, this is a genitive, I put of here. And the same thing with datives, put to, you might be changing it later. But it at least puts something that you quickly recognize as dative and genitive translation work. And for genitives, I really do prefer of here because you may have lots of issues sorting out what kind of relationship you have between the two nouns. Be sure you parse all nouns and verbs and participles fully at this point. All right, similar to what you're doing for the text as we're moving along. Second, take note of any text critical matters discussed in the footnotes of the Greek New Testament. So in your Greek New Testament, in your paragraph, there should be, hopefully there is, a textual variant or two. And if you identify those and mark where those are in your translation. You're going to be dealing more with textual critical matters in step 9 rather than doing so much of it here in step 6. If you are an English-only student and you're doing this step, take note of any places in the translation where the footnotes mention manuscripts say this or manuscripts say that. And depending on what translation you're looking at, they may bother to do that or may not. But that gives you another way to kind of get a view in the window of what kind of thing we're dealing with here. Use the same 5 English translations that you used for the earlier step. All right, use a system of comparison that makes sense to you. I'm going to be showing you what I did for the sample passage, but you can do a lot of different things here. The point is that whatever system of comparison you're using, it needs to make sense to you. You're the one going to use it. Little differences do matter. If you've got a very slight difference from one translation to another, that is an important difference. You may at the end of the day decide it doesn't matter, but do that at the end of the day, not at the beginning. All right, so take note of little differences. Keep track of all the differences you see in some kind of systematic way. And by systematic, I mean do the same thing every time X happens. Do a different same thing every time Y happens, that sort of thing. All right, label the differences as to what their type is. Is it a lexical difference or a grammatical difference? In other words, are they just choosing different words to translate a word? Or are they using different grammatical constructions to translate some difficult grammar? You want to know what kind of difference you have. Lexical differences affect how one word is conveyed in English. Grammatical differences involve multi-word constructions and affect whole clauses and connections between words and clauses. So they're very different types of issues. All right. You also need to mark the ones you think are more serious with a special mark or annotation because these are the ones that are going to need more of your time later on. If somebody puts the and someone else doesn't, it's probably not as big of a deal as a change in tense or a change in verb meaning. Those are bigger differences. All right, these will require a separate investigation later. Align your provisional translation with the 5 English translations that you're using for this task. In other words, you should be able to see a correspondence between the Greek and the 5 English ones. Your provisional translation and the 5 English translations. If you want to put the Greek above it, you can, but we're going to be doing that at another step. Show how your translation relates to the 5. And you can do that by summarizing the kinds of differences you see and the kinds of similarities you see. This can be done, the initial comparison can be done by highlighting, underlining a number of different options. The key is to see how the various translations stack up next to yours. This will provide material for sections of your project. It also gives you something to say about how your decisions are different from the various known translations. All right, we're going to move into an example. This time I borrowed one from a James project I did because I still had this nice colorized thing for it where I didn't keep mine for Galatians or for Thessalonians, sorry. And I didn't want to use my Galatians one. I don't want to spoil the surprises for you in this class. Okay, so here we have one from James. Notice that I have some differences of word choice, and I marked them in yellow. If the English translator just simply chose a different word, I put it there. If it was a different syntax, a different arrangement of words, a grammatical change, I marked it with green. If it was an addition, something that wasn't there in my translation, but the other translations had an added word, maybe to help make something clear, maybe for emphasis, they added a word. I marked those in blue. And I also have a different word order, like if word orders were just rearranged as purple. And then I went line by line through each clause, and you can decide where you want to break your text of analysis. I broke it wherever it seemed to make sense, where I nearly ran out of room on the line. I could have broke it sooner at the question mark or at a comma. That would have probably been better. But that's how I did it, and so I had fewer lines across when I did it. But notice that some of these, you get into the latter part of the second one, and almost everything is green. A lot of green in there. That means there's a syntactical decision that had to be made by everyone as they were translating, and everybody landed on something different. So that's an important thing to dig up later. Usually your syntactical ones are going to be the ones that give you the most stuff to analyze and the most stuff to contemplate. All right, going on to the next one, we have some word choice differences. We have we have a couple syntax differences, and we have at least one addition with a there is. So that was an addition the other translators didn't do. All right, moving along here, we've got a few more verses of that section. Notice that we have some significant additions in a lot of these translations. Even some of the more formal equivalent type have some additions. And that's because they recognized possibly that there was a nominal sentence or a verbless clause, and English doesn't like those. So you can see that whole string of blue right down through the second batch there. And that's where is was added, or are was added. And it looks like I didn't mark are, but I could have. That could have been marked. In here we have different order. We have the purple not. Notice that both mine and the ESV put not near the verb of is, and the others below put not around is, but around come down. So in negating one or the other, the translators chose different things to negate with the not particle. So I marked those as purple. All right. The whole goal here is to just come up with a system. I used colors. You could use anything. You could use single underline, double underline, wavy underline. Doesn't matter what you're doing. What thing you use to mark the text. What does matter is you mark similar things the same way. And if you've got a lexical difference, you're marking it one way. If you've got a grammatical difference, you're marking it another way. And you don't have to have additions in different orders as third and fourth categories. I just did that because it made sense to me to do that. All right, down here we have the end of it here. We've got a lot of word choice differences between the translations. We do get one major tense difference, will be. That was a different syntax because the future was selected instead of the present for the ESV. The rest of them kept it as present. And then we have some additions. Actually, the NLT goes with future and adds words, so it does two things at once. And so sometimes you have a system where two things change and you can't decide which way to mark it. You got to pick one of them. You either mark it as a difference or as a addition. And maybe I could have marked the will as a different syntax and marked the you and the find as additions. And that might have been a little more precise. The goal here, though, is to create a map that you can keep looking at to spot differences quickly, spot similarities quickly, and through this, be able to spot when translators are struggling and having to do something unique. All right, we have another page here. This one here is only word choice differences or additions, and most of the additions are based on English style, not really necessary for translating, but certain style of writing kind of expects certain words in certain places, and so those additions are there. And notice that the additions are coming more from the translations near the bottom of the list rather than the top, because I organized mine from the more formal down to functional down to free, as generically. That was done generically, but roughly is what I mean to say. They were roughly in that order. They're not always the same in every verse. That's the other thing to realize. All right, and here we get another section here. This time we have some seriously different syntax in the NIV and NLT, but pretty much similar stuff in my translation and the rest of them. A couple of additions and a couple of different syntaxes in both NIV and NLT. But I can be confident that my translation is pretty good when I'm comparing mine with some of the others. My word choice is different. I said product instead of fruit or harvest, only because I'm realizing that we're not dealing with a crop. We're dealing with people's lives and their behavior. So that's the way I translated that there. Okay, we're going to stop right here. I'm going to ask God's blessing on you as you work on this step. This is more of a fact-finding step to find the places where translations agree widely, disagree widely, and then how does your translation stack up? In other words, are you following the majority? Are you following the more literal? Are you following when everybody goes wide? Where do you go? That's an important thing. And when others are trying to make particularly difficult decisions, what are you doing in that spot? Recognizing those kind of places in the translation and what you're doing comparatively to them is an important step. Most commentaries do this. The scholar addresses their commentary in their commentary. They give their translation and then they say how it relates to other things and how their decisions relate to what they had to deal with. And so you're going to be doing that here eventually. This step is just to identify similarities and differences. There's no write-up for this step. There will be some write-ups later. This step is still going to be tweaked along. All right, this concludes this video. Blessings to you, and I will see you next time.